I had to use my credit card because I couldn't afford it. I'm a single mom. Come on, people. Trump, everybody, lower the grocery bills. We gotta eat. We gotta feed our kids. Come on.
In 2020, my grocery bill was $100 to $150 a month. Now, it's $300 to $350 a month.
According to a nationwide survey conducted in July 2025, around 151 million American adults reported feeling intense stress over rising food prices. Not because of rent, not because of credit card debt, but because of daily meals. Have you ever walked into a grocery store and felt shocked, almost disbelieving, at how high food prices have gotten?
$700.05. That is what I just spent at Walmart.
Right now, a mere 3% average increase in food costs at America's largest retail chains has already forced millions of families to reconsider what ends up on their dinner table. With headlines about tariffs and inflation ringing in our ears,
raise tariffs.
Tariff.
One question suddenly rises to the surface. Which 10 states are suffering the most from the food crisis? Where do you turn when your shopping cart is full, but your wallet is empty? Have you ever had to skip your favorite vegetables? Or share a single carton of milk with your kids? Join us as we uncover the real stories behind the numbers. Step into the worries of everyday people from rural Texas to tiny kitchen corners in Mississippi. And ask yourself, what would I do in their place? Number 1. Texas. Have you ever opened your fridge and felt a wave of frustration when all you saw was a bottle of dipping sauce, when you were planning for steak? Recent data shows that Texas, the nation's top beef-producing state, is now also leading the country in price hikes for both beef and produce. According to a report from San Antonio Express News, ground beef in Texas reached $6.12 per pound in June 2025, a 12% increase compared to the same time last year. Sirloin steak jumped to $11.49 per pound, putting pressure on even the most devoted meat lovers to cut back their portions. And it's not just beef. Supermarkets in Houston and surrounding areas saw a 3.1% increase in at-home food prices year over year as of June, higher than the national average. That means whether you're buying flour or milk, your weekend grocery bill is still creeping up by a few unwanted dollars. But this isn't just about statistics. It's a daily reality for countless families. One single mother in Harris County shared that she spends hours comparing prices between farmers markets and supermarkets. On weekends, she hits up local flea markets to score veggies that are 25% cheaper than at the store. For her, it's a constant emotional tug-of-war: buy enough greens for her kids or pay the utility bills on time. Many Texans are following frugal living tips, such as grinding their own meat at home to save money. But even that requires investing in a grinder and buying larger cuts of meat. Not exactly practical for households already on a tight budget. Amid this food price storm, small-scale farmers are also being squeezed. With fertilizer and animal feed costs spiking, many are offloading their early harvests at low prices, shrinking local supply. As corn and soy prices continue to climb, even basics like bread and cooking oil in Texas are inching upward. So what do you do when Texas food staples, steak and barbecue, suddenly feel out of reach? Are you cutting back on meat? Switching to vegetarian options to save money? Share your story in the comments below. Because getting through this isn't just about budgeting, it's about community. Number 2, Arkansas. Nearly 1 in 5 households in Arkansas doesn't know where their next meal will come from. With 19% of families facing food insecurity, the state is now well above the national average. And this isn't just a dry statistic. It's a crisis that's actively reshaping how thousands of people shop, eat, and survive. In Little Rock, discount chains continue to push for low prices. But even so, egg prices have surged by 25% since the start of the year, driven largely by avian flu outbreaks and rising transportation costs. Shoppers who once bought 30 egg cartons are now grabbing just a single dozen to stretch their budgets. Under this year's summer EBT program, families with children receive an additional $40 per month to help buy groceries. While that's a slight increase from last year, it still falls drastically short of the $150 average weekly grocery bill for a family of 4. Many are being forced to swap fresh produce for processed foods, trading short-term savings for long-term health risks. In Pine Bluff, volunteer-run mobile farmers markets have begun delivering produce straight from farms to rural areas, cutting grocery costs by 20%. But the model can't meet the overwhelming demand. As funding dries up, these market runs are getting cut back, adding more stress to already stretched households. In Fayetteville, small community groups are trying bulk buy co-ops, pooling resources to buy food baskets at wholesale prices. But when not enough people sign up, prices end up just as high as supermarkets. The frustration is real. Even creative grassroots efforts aren't enough to bring prices down. Temporary relief isn't easing daily anxiety. Have you ever had to skip a meal just to save for tomorrow? Do you have ideas on how Arkansas's mobile markets or summer EBT programs could be improved to ease the burden? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. This is a conversation that needs every voice. Number 3, Louisiana. With 16.2% of households in Louisiana lacking basic food security, the state is now in a full-blown crisis. The festive streets of New Orleans can't mask the growing anxiety residents feel each time they step into a grocery store. For many, financial pressure has pushed traditional meals aside, forcing families to settle for shelf-stable, low-nutrient foods just to stay afloat. White rice, a staple of the everyday Louisiana diet, has jumped nearly 18% in just the past year. That might seem like a small number, until you realize it's adding several extra dollars a week to a budget that hasn't grown. Each rigid pound of rice now serves as a harsh reminder that every single meal must be planned with military precision to avoid going over budget. Seafood. Another pillar of Louisiana cuisine hasn't been spared. From June last year to this June, prices for shrimp fish and shellfish rose an average of 6.3%. The iconic boiled shrimp platter, once a proud symbol of coastal tradition, has become a luxury. Many families are now swapping out fresh seafood for canned alternatives with little flavor left to enjoy. It's hard not to feel disheartened when the scent of the sea seems to exist only in memory. The state's food assistance expansion program has added an extra $35 per month for vulnerable groups. But with average grocery bills climbing to $150 per week for a family of 4, the help barely scratches the surface. The gap between rising costs and limited aid is leaving people feeling helpless and left behind. At local markets, foot traffic is down by 10% compared to last year. Small riverside shops along the Mississippi aren't buzzing like they used to. Barcode scanners have replaced conversations and shoppers rarely linger. They move quickly, grabbing only the least inflated items and heading straight for the exit. Have you ever opened your fridge and found nothing but processed food when it used to be full of fresh ingredients? What would you do when a plate of boiled shrimp from your childhood suddenly feels too far out of reach? Tell us how you're adjusting your meals as Louisiana faces this storm of rising food prices. Your voice matters, especially now. Number 4, Mississippi. The fridge door cracks open to reveal just a few cans of processed meat and half a bag of yesterday's leftover rice. Have you ever stopped to realize that while your meal may look filling, the actual nutrition has slowly slipped away, leaving only what feels just enough? In Mississippi, 16.2% of households don't know where their next meal is coming from. That number rings like an alarm bell across neighborhoods of tin roof houses and packed communities along the riverbanks. Every weekend, long lines of cars queue up outside food banks hoping for relief bags. Requests for assistance have jumped 14% compared to this time last year. Clear proof that food insecurity isn't easing up. When all a family takes home is a sack of cornmeal and a tin of canned fish, the haunting question of what's next no longer feels distant. It hits home. In Holmes County, children wait for their school lunches with blank stares, knowing that nearly 2% of their classmates won't have a meal once the school bell rings. That's not just a statistic. It's the silent heartbreak of a child realizing that yesterday's piece of bread won't be back today. That moment burns itself into memory, echoed in the sound of rice being scooped and plastic bags rustling in the wind. The stress isn't just numbers on a page. If proposed, snap cuts go through tens of thousands of Mississippi families could lose their monthly food support. That means having to choose between putting food on the table or keeping the lights on. The shadow of these possible cuts hangs heavy, turning grocery trips and news headlines into sources of daily anxiety. To make matters worse, the nearest large grocery stores are 30 to 40 miles away from many small towns. Rising fuel prices have forced families to make fewer trips, once a week at most, leaving fresh fish and green vegetables off the table. Often the cost of getting there outweighs the food they can afford to bring back. Put yourself in their shoes. Imagine the helplessness of having to weigh every single item in your cart. Have you ever had to walk away from milk or fresh produce because the budget just wouldn't stretch? What would you do to make sure your family's meals aren't just filling but actually nourishing, especially in times like these? Share your story and ideas in the comments below. Together we can find a way forward. Number 5, West Virginia. As morning fog still lingers over the winding mountain roads, many West Virginia families are already charting a course to the nearest city, just to reach the most affordable grocery chain. With the lowest grocery store density in the entire country, they often drive up to 45 minutes each way just to pick up the basics for dinner. That quiet sense of isolation sinks in when you realize there's no grocery option anywhere close to home. Rising food prices have pushed the cost of a single grocery run well past $30, not counting gas or travel time. Fresh milk, once a symbol of nutritional security, has jumped nearly 8% in just 6 months. The simple decision of go or stay home becomes a real conflict for low-income families. Every trip is both a financial burden and a logistical risk. West Virginia's food insecurity rate is close to 14% higher than the national average. But it's more than just a statistic. It's every quiet car pulling out of a gas station with a trunk full of barely enough groceries. 1 in 6 residents now relies on SNAP. Any policy change or cut threatens to strip away the only safety net many of them have. And it's not just the lack of stores. Long, harsh winters bring another challenge: skyrocketing heating costs. Many households are forced to choose between buying firewood or stocking up on milk and vegetables. When temperatures fall below freezing, people cut back on greens just to stay warm. The cold outside becomes a brutal reminder of the price they're forced to pay. Some communities have experimented with social grocery programs, where members pay a small upfront fee in exchange for discounted basic goods. These programs often allow one gift basket per month. Modest, but still a comfort when an empty cart finally gets filled. Still, for those with razor-thin budgets, even this small fee requires careful consideration. Can you imagine neighbors pooling money for gas, squeezing together on a crowded bus to make the weekly grocery trip? Instead of small talk, they exchange updates like, "Did you find that cheap bag of flour? Any luck with vegetables?" And when you glance inside those nearly empty bags, you feel the deep loneliness and quiet anxiety that weighs on this mountain community. What do you think local leaders or government programs could do to erase these food deserts in rural West Virginia? Share your thoughts below. And let's search for solutions together. Number 6, Oklahoma. Hundreds of small noodle shops in Oklahoma City, once serving up fragrant bowls of stir-fried noodles for lunch, are now plagued with anxiety every time a supplier tallies up the bill for cooking oil. Prices for corn and soybean oil have climbed nearly 5% over the past 6 months, thanks to higher import tariffs on fertilizer. This essential seasoning has become a burden for families who rely on budget-friendly home-cooked meals. On the sandwich bread shelves at the state's largest grocery chain, loaves appear to hold the same price. But their weight has clearly dropped. No longer do they offer the fluffy whole wheat aroma of days past. Instead, the crust is thinner, the crumb less airy, and kids carrying their lunchboxes to school feel less excitement than before. By the end of the day, that same loaf effectively costs $2 extra, pushing many people into tough choices between feeding their family and paying the utility bills. Local food aid groups had hoped to ease costs by importing rice from neighboring Texas. However, rice prices have surged along with everything else, and overland shipping costs tacked on nearly $3 per bag in just 2 months. Before the first spoonful of soup is even warmed, budgeting stress is already bearing down on the dinner table. A strange hush has settled over the deli meat counters. Processed pork products have gone up about 4%, forcing deli counters to change portion sizes. Sandwich cold cuts are no longer a default choice. Many customers are switching to cheaper frozen slices, even if they know the taste and protein quality can't compare. The state government did increase SNAP assistance in the second quarter of this year, but the under $10 monthly boost barely covers a few days' worth of groceries. For everything else, families are forced to manage by turning to more convenient, highly processed foods which usually lack proper nutrition. Under this financial strain, many people find themselves nostalgic for those weekend BBQ gatherings, grilling fresh meat on a backyard flame, now reduced to a memory. At smaller farmers markets, naturally grown vegetables have also become pricey. A bunch of leafy greens that once cost about $2 is now hitting $4, and often sells out just hours after market stalls open. The constant struggle between price and quality has driven many households to temporarily give up on these healthier choices. Have you ever stood under the dim yellow lights of a local grocery store wondering what items are still within your reach? Would you prioritize fresh produce or resign yourself to instant noodles just to feel full? Share how you cope with food price pressure in Oklahoma below, so we can spread knowledge and find solutions together. Number 7, Alabama. As the first heat of summer lingers in the air, the ceiling fans in small Birmingham kitchens whir with a screech, as if warning of another long night of battling rising living costs. In Alabama, cooking oil prices are soaring, driven by a 6.3% spike in the meats, poultry, fish, and eggs category over the 12 months leading up to June 2025. Soybean oil, an essential ingredient in many fried dishes, has climbed about 5% in just 6 months. Picture an office worker making a quick grocery run after her shift. She has just $20 in hand for the entire dinner. That's why she reluctantly skips the buttery, garlic-scented fried fish fillet and instead picks up a cheap pack of egg noodles. As she lays the noodles and seasoning packet into her cart, a wave of quiet disappointment sets in. It's not quite the meal she imagined. And it's not just Anne. Many families in Alabama are now falling back on what they call cold rice dinners. Pre-cooked rice stored in the fridge and stretched over several days, paired with canned pickled vegetables to extend shelf life. While food at home rose only 2.0% in June, the 5 main grocery categories rose 2.8% year-over-year, making ingredient-by-ingredient budgeting a top priority. Seniors in Tuscaloosa, once fond of homemade vegetable soup, are now turning to canned alternatives. The price of a single can of vegan soup has climbed to nearly $4, over 20% higher than last year. As food prices skyrocket, they find themselves torn between maintaining healthy eating habits or switching to faster, less nutritious meals. Alabama's SNAP program provides about $25 per week for low-income households. But that's often not enough to close the gap between real prices and what people can actually afford. Many are forced into what they call pre-planned eating, buying all the week's food at once and rationing it out in plastic containers. The stress of stocking up also raises the risk of spoilage, adding a psychological weight to every trip to the fridge. At local summer markets, produce sells for about 15% less than at big box stores, but the supply often vanishes within 2 hours of opening. Residents hop on bikes at the crack of dawn just to grab a fresh bunch of morning glory or a couple of crisp carrots. That image serves as a reminder in this battle against food prices, time itself has become a currency. Have you ever opened your fridge to find it full of plastic containers instead of fresh home-cooked meals? Would you stretch your dollar by eating cold rice? Or would you rather pay a little more to preserve the comfort of a hot dinner? Share how you're weathering the wave of food inflation in Alabama, and help the community uncover sustainable solutions. Number 8, South Carolina. At the Low Country Food Bank, volunteers rush to load sacks of rice and cans of sardines onto trucks ready for distribution across 10 coastal counties. With food insecurity now reaching 14.4% in the state, each bag isn't just filled with food, it's packed with the quiet fear that recipients might lose access to the dishes that have long tied them to their memories. In the southern region, at-home food prices have risen 2% year-over-year, and that seemingly modest increase has hit iconic fresh ingredients like okra and tomatoes especially hard. Walk through your local market and you'll notice how the okra shelves, once overflowing with the deep green harvest from Gullah Geechee farmers, now sit nearly bare. There's a subtle ache that comes with seeing a traditional dish become suddenly unaffordable. The situation is only growing more difficult with upcoming SNAP cuts that could affect more than 567,000 residents, either reducing or eliminating their benefits. As federal aid thins out, families are forced to swap once fresh staples of coastal cuisine for cheaper processed alternatives, like canned meats or instant noodles. Programs like Growing Food, locally in partnership with the Gullah Farmers Cooperative, are working hard to bring rice and yams directly from farm to table at prices 20% lower than supermarkets. But limited supply and growing demand leave most families wondering if they'll even have the chance to enjoy foods rooted in cultural identity. In Charleston, diners once delighted in butter-kissed plates of shrimp and grits, but now think twice before ordering. Shrimp prices have climbed nearly 5%, driven up by rising fuel costs and import tariffs. Between the sound of crashing waves and the clatter of empty forks at roadside eateries, the disappointment has never felt more real. Have you ever craved a dish so deeply that just the smell could bring back memories of home and family? But now all you see are slim pickings in the produce aisle and instant noodles stacked next to canned fish. What would you do to preserve the flavors of your culture while stretching every dollar? Share how you're managing to keep your meals nutritious and still true to the heart of South Carolina. Number 9, Kentucky. Amid the endless cornfields, many families in Kentucky still struggle to find a secure footing for tomorrow's meal. Recent data shows that 410 Kentuckians are facing food insecurity. For them, every dinner is a math problem, income minus expenses. And the haunting question, will there be enough for the kids to eat, has become a daily worry. The average cost of a single meal in Kentucky has risen to $3.19, up from $2.75 in 2019. That difference might seem small, but for families relying on SNAP or working low-wage jobs, it can mean cutting out fresh produce or scaling back on protein. You can feel that pressure when the grocery basket holds only a pack of noodles and a can of beans. No grilled meat like before. It doesn't stop there. 4 out of 5 key grocery categories have seen price hikes over 2% in the past year, with poultry and eggs climbing more than 6%, turning something as simple as a fried egg breakfast into a luxury. Financial strain is pushing more people toward ultra-processed, cheaper options, even when they know the long-term health trade-offs. In many mountainous areas, the nearest grocery store can be over 20 miles away. A single trip costs a fair amount in gas, and fresh produce is often sold out by morning. Small garden plots supported by nonprofit organizations can only cover a fraction of the need, leaving a sense of disappointment as the dream of clean, accessible food fades further from reach. Schools and student-led groups have ramped up free meal programs and take-what-you-need pantries for hungry students, but their capacity is limited. When those cafeteria doors close, many young people return to their dorm rooms with empty stomachs and a silent, growing anxiety. Have you ever had to count every penny just to afford a bottle of milk for your child? Have you ever wondered whether the food support system is strong enough to carry Kentucky through this storm of rising costs? Share your experiences and any solutions you found, so together the community can chart a stronger, more stable path forward. Number 10. Missouri. The bustling energy of Kansas City stands in stark contrast to the growing number of food pantry signs dotting the landscape. According to the latest data, around 779,000 Missourians are unsure where their next meal will come from. This isn't just a statistic. It's a heavy, daily shadow cast over hundreds of thousands of families. In southern Missouri, deep in the Ozark forests, food insecurity rates climb even higher, and children suffer the most, with nearly 18% facing hunger. While you might imagine a breakfast of biscuits and milk, many households are left with just a single pack of crackers to share. Prices for staples like bread and fresh milk in Springfield have risen over 4% in just 6 months, quietly adding dollars to each week's grocery bill. The fear of just getting enough is constant, especially for families without access to major supermarket chains, left relying on smaller shops with marked-up prices. Mobile food trucks have become lifelines for isolated rural counties. Volunteer groups roll in under the midday sun, handing out vegetables and canned goods. But with visits only once a month, these trucks can't keep up with daily needs. As each one pulls away, those waiting are left with a renewed sense of emptiness. In St. Louis, young families are reworking their cooking routines, switching from fresh ingredients to frozen meals, even knowing they're less nutritious and high in sodium. At the same time, rising energy costs have forced many to choose between heating meals or heating their homes as winter approaches. The state government has increased SNAP funding, but the number of people eligible has actually decreased. The current aid still can't offset the nearly 3% statewide rise in food costs. With limited resources, people are left to stretch whatever little they have. Have you ever stood at the entrance of a grocery store and wondered, should I choose canned goods or fresh produce today? What would you do when every shopping trip feels like a battle with rising prices? Do you know of any practical solutions to help Missourians stop teetering between hunger and just barely getting by? Share your story below and let's find a way forward, together. We've just traveled through 10 states where surging food prices have turned the simple act of eating into a daily financial puzzle. From steak becoming a luxury in Texas to carefully calculated carts in Arkansas, from sky-high rice and seafood costs in Louisiana to food deserts in West Virginia. Families are constantly forced to weigh portions against pocketbooks. In Oklahoma, even cooking oil and deli meat are burdens. In Alabama, cold rice is all that's left for dinner. In South Carolina, local flavor fades under inflation's grip. In Kentucky, every meal tests the mind. And in Missouri, hunger spreads from city blocks to country roads, leaving communities exhausted and strained. Yet even in hardship, there are sparks of compassion and connection. Mobile food markets, community-supported agriculture programs, and social goods stores helping soften the blow. Today, the warning signs aren't just in the numbers. They're in the eyes and stories of hundreds of thousands of families fighting to make it through the week.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage education. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.